Yo, America! Remember when Trump used to tweet about everything? Well, back in 2023, he set his sights on South Africa. He called out their government for, get this, seizing land from white farmers. He even threw around the word genocide, comparing it to what was happening with Israel. Trump claimed South Africa was mistreating white farmers and taking their land without paying them. He wasn't happy about South Africa's stance on Israel either. Trump didn't stop at just talking. He decided to hit South Africa where it hurts, their wallets. He put a freeze on all that money America was sending over. You know, the aid money that helps with important stuff. Trump said it was because of those human rights violations against white farmers. But some people think he had other motives. This whole thing blew up because of a new law South Africa made about land. They called it the Expropriation Act. Sounds scary, right? We'll break it down for you. So, this land law in South Africa has everyone talking. Here's the deal. For a long time, black South Africans were treated unfairly. Couldn't own land, couldn't vote, the whole 9 yards. Apartheid, they called it. Messed up system. Even after apartheid ended, things didn't magically get better. Black South Africans still owned way less land than white people. The government decided to do something about it. They passed this Expropriation Act, which basically says they can take land in certain situations, like if the land isn't being used or if it's dangerous for people. The idea is to give that land back to black South Africans who were robbed of it during apartheid. Sounds fair, right? But not everyone saw it that way. Some people, especially white farmers, were freaking out. They thought the government was going to come and take their land without paying them a cent. Cue the dramatic music. Now, the South African government, they weren't having any of this land grab talk. They kept saying, hold up, that's not what's happening here. They said this whole law was about fixing the past, not punishing anyone. They even compared it to something called eminent domain in America, where the government can take your house or land if it's for the greater good. They have to pay you for it, of course. The government insisted they weren't just going to snatch land willy-nilly. They said there's a whole process with courts and stuff to make sure everything's done by the book. They also said they're committed to making sure everyone is treated fairly, regardless of their race. Sounds reasonable, right? But then this dude Elon Musk jumps into the picture and things get even more interesting. You know Elon Musk, right? The guy with the rockets and electric cars? Turns out he's originally from South Africa, and he had some strong opinions about this whole land situation. He called the South African government's plans openly racist, and said they were attacking white farmers. Now Musk is a smart guy, but he's also known for being a bit, shall we say, outspoken. Some people thought he was exaggerating things and stirring up trouble. They pointed out that while there have been some attacks on white farmers, it's not like there's a genocide happening. They said South Africa has a high crime rate in general, and farmers are often targeted because they live in remote areas and have valuable stuff, but Musk wasn't backing down. He even got into a Twitter war with the South African government. It was like watching a reality TV show but with billionaires and politicians. Section 5. The US aid freeze. A controversial decision with global implications. Okay, so remember that aid money Trump froze? Well, it turns out a lot of it was going to really important stuff like fighting HIV and AIDS. See, South Africa has a huge HIV and AIDS problem, one of the worst in the world, and America has been helping them out with medication and prevention programs. But when Trump cut off the aid, it put all those programs at risk. People were worried that without the medication, more people would get sick and die. They accused Trump of using sick people as pawns in his political games. Not a good look, dude. The aid freeze also had a ripple effect on other countries. See, America is the biggest donor to global health initiatives. So when they pulled back on aid to South Africa, it sent a message to other countries. Hey, we might not always have your back. Not exactly the best way to win friends and influence people. Section 6, HIV/AIDS programs in peril, the human cost of political disputes. Now let's talk about the real victims in all of this: ordinary South Africans living with HIV/AIDS. For them, this wasn't just some political game, it was about life and death, literally. Without access to affordable medication, many of them faced the very real prospect of their health deteriorating, even dying prematurely. The aid freeze threatened to undo years of progress in the fight against HIV/AIDS in South Africa. It also put an incredible strain on the South African healthcare system, which was already struggling to cope with the high number of people needing treatment. It's important to remember that behind all the political posturing and Twitter wars, there are real people whose lives are being affected. And in this case, it was the most vulnerable members of society who were paying the price. Section 7. South Africa responds condemnation and calls for dialogue. So how did South Africa react to all of this? Well, they weren't exactly thrilled. The government called Trump's accusations misinformed and said he was out of touch with the situation on the ground. They insisted that they were committed to the rule of law and that no one was having their land stolen. President Ramaphosa even got on the phone with Elon Musk to try and clear the air. He explained the government's position and assured Musk that they were committed to protecting the rights of all South Africans, regardless of their race or ethnicity. But despite their efforts to engage in dialogue, the South African government made it clear that they wouldn't be bullied by Trump or anyone else. They said they were prepared to take whatever steps necessary to protect their sovereignty and their people. Section 8. The politicization of aid, a dangerous precedent. The whole South Africa situation raised some serious questions about the use of humanitarian aid as a political tool. Critics accused Trump of using aid money to punish countries that didn't agree with his policies. They argued that this kind of politicization of aid was dangerous and could have devastating consequences for people in need. They pointed out that humanitarian aid should be based on need, not political expediency. Using it as a bargaining chip or a weapon undermines the very principles of humanitarianism and erodes trust between nations. The South Africa case served as a stark reminder of the importance of keeping humanitarian aid separate from political considerations. It also highlighted the need for greater transparency and accountability in the way aid is distributed and used. Section 9. Conclusion. A complex issue with no easy answers. So, there you have it. The saga of Trump, South Africa, and the land expropriation law. It's a complicated issue with no easy answers. On the one hand, you have the legacy of apartheid and the very real need to address historical injustices. On the other hand, you have concerns about property rights and the rule of law. Add to that the volatile mix of politics, social media, and a global pandemic, and you have a recipe for controversy. The situation in South Africa is a reminder that the world is a complex place, and there are often multiple sides to every story. It's also a reminder that words have power, and actions have consequences. And sometimes, even with the best of intentions, we can end up doing more harm than good.